Let's start with the fifth fort, on our way to the cornerstone of the theory. So, you yourselves have just demolished your fourth fort, the fort of slow change which you talked about ad nauseum. Whenever we asked, why hasn't any evolution happened in the known history of mankind, you would answer, evolution is too slow. It takes hundreds of thousands or even millions of years. So, is there nepotism in the world of evolution? Are there organisms that remain as is and do not evolve for hundreds of millions of years? By the way, this theory is good news for the aviation fans among the myth disciples. If you own a car showroom and a hurricane is expected to hit the city, leave your cars in the parking lot. You may wake up the next day to find that at least one of them has suddenly turned into a plane. They even ridicule each other, mock each other, disagree, and establish their own evolutionary doctrine, the most recent of which is the third way of evolution, by a group of leading evolutionists. A quick word here to those who want to reconcile revelation with evolution. Which of these different doctrines do you want to reconcile revelation with? For those who say, which Islam do you want us to follow? The solution is to abandon religion altogether and resort to science. Today we discuss the 12th technique of deception used by the myth disciples. Remodeling theories to resuscitate them even after all their pillars collapse, just like made-to-order idols fashioned by the people of Jahiliyyah, pre-Islamic age of ignorance.
Why are you upset?
My neighborhood is conspiring against me.
Really? Why do you say that?
Look, Samir and Tamir are at home, so Safwan and Adnan must be with them. The four of them only meet to conspire against me. Especially lately. After the quarrels I had with them, and this deceitful guy, Safwan, always incites them against me. Actually, I would like to call this fact the conspiracy theory.
The conspiracy theory? Okay, come and have a look. Adnan and Safwan are walking in the street. If your theory is correct, the four of them would be together.
Okay, but Samir and Tamir are in the house. I can see them. They are whispering, and they have a paper. They must be plotting something and writing the plan on paper to remember it.
Brother, you claim that they are conspiring against you because the four of them are together. But I prove to you that they are not together.
Yes, that's because you don't know. The theory has just been modified. It has become the bisected conspiracy theory. The bisected conspiracy theory because two of them write the plan while the other two execute it on the street.
All right, wait.
Where are you going?
Wait a minute.
Where are you going? Come here.
Wait. This is the paper that the neighbors had. It's the timetable for the World Cup.
Come on, man. This is just camouflage. The thing is, I knew that they would resort to camouflage. In fact, my theory has just been modified to become the bisected camouflage conspiracy theory. You know nothing about this theory, yet you're arguing with me, you ignoramus.
With such arguments, can we ever disprove our friend's theory? Certainly not. Because with his constant modifications, he's made it unfalsifiable. The Book of Allah, the origin of beneficial knowledge, came with prophecies that have been validated. It also presents falsification criteria and challenges people to meet them. If they want to prove that the Quran is not from Allah, then bring a single surah of its like and call your witnesses apart from Allah if you are truthful. Had it been from anyone other than Allah, they would have certainly found in it many inconsistencies. So, prove any inconsistency in the Quran, or bring a surah of its like. A test that anyone, practically anyone, can try, and many other tests set by the Quran. However, in the world of myths, predictions fail, one after the other. As we saw in Darwin's Gobbledygook, with Darwin's prediction of innumerable transitional forms, and as we saw in his followers' predictions on beneficial mutations, and the prediction that we would be able to create life in the lab, etc. This led his followers to deport their predictions to the edge of the universe, and even beyond, as we saw, to make it impossible to test them. One question remains open. Is there any falsification criteria which, if realized, would make the theory's followers admit that it's invalid? Because falsification tests do not only disprove parts of a theory, but also demolish its pillars and empty it of all content. Let's see. As we proceed, please keep in mind our friend and the continuous modifications of his conspiracy theory. Darwin's delusions, which have turned into a theory. A primitive organism, evolved through random changes and blind natural selection. Gradually, slowly, evolving through innumerable transitional forms to produce all the living organisms that we see today. Dear viewers, remember these 5 pillars. That are the same pillars of neo-Darwinism, or the modern synthesis theory in its first form. Let's start with the 5th fort on our way to the cornerstone of the theory. Innumerable transitional forms. Let's set aside the miserable stories of fossil forgeries and misinterpretations. The bottom line is that Darwin's followers agree with us that they did not find innumerable transitional forms in the Earth's layers. Even the leading evolutionist Stephen Gould, in his book, The Panda's Thumb, states, "The history of most fossil species includes 2 features, particularly inconsistent with gradualism. First, stasis. Second, sudden appearance. In any local area, a species does not arise gradually by the steady transformation of its ancestors. It appears all at once and fully formed." Gould tried to provide explanations, as we will see. There are also similar testimonies from the evolutionist professor of natural history, Keith Thompson, as well as Robert Carroll and others. Such admissions are ignored by the myth's leading promoters. Thus, the 5th fort has fallen, the fort of innumerable transitional forms. Are you now convinced of the invalidity of the theory? They'll answer, we'd rather modify the theory to accommodate the fact that the innumerable transitional forms prediction has not materialized. Our modification states that evolution happens rapidly at times to produce new species which remain without evolving for millions of years. That's why the fossil record can't keep up with the resulting transitional forms from tachytelic evolution. We call this modified theory at the level of families of organisms. Quantum evolution. We also made another modification at the level of species, which we call punctuated equilibrium or punctuated evolution. So, on the contrary, sudden appearance of species without transitional forms is one of the pillars of our modified theory. You know nothing about this theory, yet you argue with us. You ignoramus? Wait a minute. Tachytelic evolution? So, you yourselves have just demolished your 4th fort, the fort of slow change which you talked about ad nauseum. Whenever we asked, why hasn't any evolution happened in the known history of mankind? You'd say, evolution is too slow. It takes hundreds of thousands or even millions of years. So pray enlighten us. Is evolution very rapid or very slow? They'll answer, at times it's rapid, which we call tachytelic evolution. At other times it is slow, which we call bradytelic evolution. We are not asking you about your invented names. These are nothing but names which you have named. We are asking you about the facts. Is there nepotism in the world of evolution as well? We have fossils of organisms whose age you estimate in millions or even hundreds of millions of years, yet they are as they are now. Why have they not evolved?
Then they say, here are the ants. They are millions of years old, as confirmed by evolution scientists. They found ants in amber, ants from millions of years ago. Why have they not evolved? Why would they evolve? Who said that they have to evolve? Who said that there is a unified pace of evolution for all organisms? Incorrect. Modern synthesis states that evolution doesn't happen at a unified speed, so they are totally aware of that.
It seems like you don't know. My theory is that half of my neighbors write the plan, while the other half execute it out on the street. I am totally aware of this. Fossils of a certain species of fern were discovered, and they estimated their age to be at least 180 million years. They analyzed the genetic material and found that it has remained as is. It did not change as published in Science. So, is there nepotism in the world of evolution too? Are there organisms that remain as is and do not evolve for hundreds of millions of years? Yet, you want to convince us that environmental conditions caused the other organisms in the same region to evolve very rapidly, just like a junior employee gets promoted suddenly? Don't you claim that genetics is the strongest evidence for evolution? Well, genetics tells us, as discussed in episode 33, that the differences between organisms who supposedly evolved from each other are in tens or hundreds of millions of letters at the genetic code level. You tried for a long time to convince us that random mechanisms such as mutations, chromosomal hybridization, retroviruses, and jumping genes can cause these changes, if given millions and hundreds of millions of years. How did these alleged millions suddenly shrink to thousands? What's important is that the slow change fort has collapsed. Let's move on to the third fort, the fort of gradualism. Genetics and physiology refute the idea of gradualism. In Address Them as Children, we showed that, even for a slight modification to occur in the same organism such as the elongation of the giraffe's neck, many changes must happen together, all at once. This elongation requires the enlargement of the heart, the placement of special valves in blood vessels, the rete mirabile special design, and the thick skin of the lower limbs of the giraffe. The occurrence of any of these before the others would result in disharmony and an organism that is unfit to survive. For instance, if the giraffe's heart enlarged before the other mechanisms and before the elongation of its neck, its vessels would explode. And if the neck elongated first, the blood would not reach the brain. All of this is only at the level of the cardiovascular system, let alone the other changes needed in other systems: digestive, respiratory, nervous, muscular, skeletal, neck vertebrae, etc. It is necessary for the changes to occur in all these systems simultaneously. Similarly, all other biological systems are based on irreducible complexity. Therefore, there is no room for accumulated change because we are not talking about adding Lego pieces successively, but about living organisms whose organs and systems must be fully integrated and work harmoniously. To simplify, imagine that we are required to change the word animal into human. If the changes are gradual, the first change might produce the word himal, the second humal, and the third human. The words himal and humal are meaningless in the world of biology. Such beings do not exist. They are unfit for survival or reproduction. Therefore, we can never get to a human through them, and there is no way for gradualism in the purported evolutionary change from one organism to another. So, did the myth's followers admit its invalidity? No. Instead, they said, "We will modify our theory to say that a large number of mutations may occur to produce one kind of organism from another at once without the need for gradualism. This explains the absence of transitional forms in the fossil record. We will call this modified theory macromutation or saltation, which is yet another form of evolution, random changes, and blind natural selection." So, tens of millions of the specific necessary genetic code letters change randomly all at once. That is, if we represent the genetic material of an organism with Word documents that are open on tens of thousands of computers, where each document represents a specific gene, and all need to cooperate to form the body of a single organism. The mutations are just like the baby's strikes on the keyboards, as in the episode Address Them as Children. The babies, according to this theory, hit a great number of keys, synchronously, which added meaningful paragraphs, erased lines, and changed letters, without making any mistakes in the rest of the paragraphs in the document. All of this is random and coincidental, and they call this science. By the way, this theory is good news for aviation fans among the myth disciples. If you own a car showroom and a hurricane is expected to hit the city, leave your cars in the parking lot, as you may wake up the next day to find at least one of them has turned into a plane, all at once via random simultaneous changes, if we follow your friend's illusions. Especially since evolution no longer requires millions of years but can happen all at once, as they claim. Thus, the idea of slow evolution has completely collapsed because evolution no longer needs thousands or millions of years. It just happens. More importantly, the third fort of gradualism has collapsed. Of course, dear viewers, when we say that the myth's followers modified one theory to another and that we tell them this, and they answer us that, we don't mean to say that they're all on the same page, or deny that they disagree with each other, as some remain committed to gradualism, while others deny it. Additionally, the idea of saltation or macromutation was mocked and strongly rejected for a while, until a number of evolutionists came back in support of it. They even ridicule each other and mock each other. And to be honest, all of them are right to mock. Moreover, the supporters of Bradytelic evolution describe Tachytelic evolution as evolution by jerks, And Tachytelic evolution supporters respond that Bradytelic evolution is an evolution by creeps. It's enough, in order to see how miserable they are, to look at the criticism section on this Wikipedia page on punctuated evolution. More serious verbal attacks are found in the speeches of the participants in the 2016 New Trends in Evolutionary Biology conference. They describe the dogmatic hostility they face from the followers of the traditional theoretical edifice, as they call it. They even split from each other to establish their own evolutionary doctrines. One such recent doctrine is the Third Way of Evolution, whose members include a group of leading evolutionists. Yes, they do differ, and greatly, but they all agree that the myth must persist, one way or another. Just like the people of the Jahiliyyah who worshipped idols disagreed, with some creating their own idol to worship and crediting everything to it. Some worshipped Hubal, others worshipped Al-Uzza, Al-Lat, Manat, Dat al-Shara, Isaf, or Na'ilah. They even fought about their gods, but they all agreed on the myth of polytheism. Likewise, the evolution myth disciples create their own modifications, their own idol for the myth of evolution, then they give it credit for their existence, as well as the existence of all beings. So they have the different forms of evolution: convergent evolution, divergent evolution, parallel evolution, gradual evolution, quantum evolution, punctuated evolution, macromutational evolution, saltational evolution, extended evolution, co-evolution, and the idol creation continues. The important thing is to retain the word evolution, to deny creation with intent, wisdom, and will. Here, we say to those who want to reconcile revelation with evolution, which of these types do you want to reconcile revelation with, especially when many of them contradict each other? For those who say, which Islam do you want us to follow? The solution is to abandon religion altogether and resort to science, as if this alleged science is an issue of common agreement, let alone the fact that it is pseudoscience and that Islam and real science never contradict. We say, which science do you want us to follow? Gradual evolution, or punctuated evolution, or extended evolution? Which one exactly? Let's go back to the forts of the evolution theory. Which are left standing? 3 forts have collapsed and 2 remain. Now we are approaching the cornerstone of the theory. However, dear viewers, in order not to keep you long, we'll postpone the discussion on these 2 forts for next episode, which is a very important and crucial episode full of surprises. Finally, we return to the question with which we started our episode. So, myth followers, is there any phenomenon or fact which might make you one day admit the invalidity of your theory? Today, dear viewers, we discuss the 12th technique of deception used by the myth's disciples, which is forming theories that can be modified, even if all their pillars collapse, just like the made-to-order idols fashioned by the people of Jahiliyyah. May the peace and mercy of Allah be upon you.